Lots of beauty to read this morning. Deep breath, here we go. We read together. Is not this the kind of, okay, hold on. Y'all are doing pretty good, but it's kind of coming from your head voice. I need this to come from your chest because Isaiah once proclaimed becomes real. Okay, so from here, ready? Let's say it again. Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen to loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood. Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and he will say, here am I. Ooh. If you do away with the yoke of oppression, with the pointing finger and the malicious talk, and if you spend yourselves in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness and your night will become like the noonday. Ooh. The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land. Feel familiar? Strengthen your frame. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets with dwellings. These are the very words of God. Please be seated. Beautiful, right? But kind of intense. Wonderful, but a little bit in your face. So is Isaiah. It's the way that it works. And I think it's why Jesus is who he is and why he quotes what he quotes. And so maybe we should be paying attention to that too. Isaiah is powerful. When I was about 15 years old, I went on a mission trip to the Appalachian Mountains. Anybody been to the Appalachian Mountains? Yeah. It's beautiful, but it's sort of dynamic and it can be difficult. It's got all of the wealth that you can imagine. You'd be driving down a road and just kind of mountainous, kind of rolling beauty. And there are these just incredible homes and lives that are just kind of laid out in this beautiful way. And kind of unique to West Virginia, at least, is where we were. Right across the street, you'll find what they call a holler. Anybody ever heard? Yeah, okay, some of you are like, yep, y'all know what a holler is, right? A holler literally kind of just dips right off the road and it's a really rough piece of ground that you don't even think somebody could build their house on, but they do. And what we tended to do with our church growing up is we would go to the Appalachian Mountains, Appalachia Service Project, and we would come as teams into these homes to kind of make them safe, build them out, paint them, just improve them. We got to do some of that. And it was always humbling and powerful, but this particular time was transformative for me in a way that I have not really even now fully understood. So we got to this house and low ceilings, tall guy, so guess who paints? Me. And one of the things that happens really quick though is that this family has a little boy in it, and little boy is about 2 years old, he's about this big. And you can decide how you feel about my life. I was almost this tall at 15, right? So, but I was literally like a $105 and 6'3" or something like that, with big teeth. So my nickname was Rake. True. Wear a cowboy hat. They called me Nail. Like it's like real. Yeah. You're gonna have to heal from your laughter. Just kidding. We were all close friends. Anyway, so I was a big kid, kind of scrawny, and this little boy, his name was Spanky, and I've thought about Spanky a long time. Now, I still to this day have no idea what his real name was, zero. In fact, I asked his mom, like, why do y'all call him Spanky? And she looked at me like I was dumb as a box of rocks. Like, do you really want me to explain to you why we call a child Spanky? And I'm like, I really don't, right? He wasn't the best behaved, I guess. Maybe it's because of that we became really good friends, like really good friends. Like we were always looking for fun. He was always looking for me because I was always looking for fun. So after a while, we had a little break, and he and I would play, and we turned, pieces of wood into cars, and we did all kinds of stuff. And I learned then that I just love kids, like all the time. They're super fun. And so we would play. In fact, then the next day I got there, and one of the most heartwarming things of my life until that point was I got out of the van, and when I got out of the van, bang, he came out of that screen door, down those little steps, and ran across the yard to me like a long lost family member. And I scooped him up and I held him, and he just was chattering at me, this kind of stuff. No idea. He had this really terrible accent. And so I had no idea, right? But I loved him. Like instantly. Like I gave love to him like a 15-year-old does. Just never have before. Full on. I remember he would let me pick him up and throw him like this, which I did with all of my children when Kathy was either, arm's length away or in the other room, right? Full on, like way up here. And if you do that when you have a tall dad, it's a lot to handle. So I was like, I'd throw him up like this, and he would just laugh, and I would catch him, and I'd throw him again. He would just laugh, and then they would stop us. And it usually sounds like this, Scott. Sorry. I just loved him. And because I was the age that I was, what I didn't think about was that I was going to have to leave. Right? And it just broke my heart. Broke my heart to leave that kid. Even today, I can feel it. He was in the front yard. Mom was holding him. And I'm sure he thought I was coming back the next day. Like, he had no way. And I knew that I wasn't probably going to see him again. It was terrible. Plus, I was 15 years old, and all the kids that called me Nail and Rake were in the van, so I couldn't really bawl like a baby, which is what I wanted to do. I had to say stuff like, what are we doing later, And what happened to me in the van has been true for me for a long time. I had questions for God. My question basically sounded like this. Why was I born where I was born and he was born where he was born? Why do I get all of this? And I promise you, I have gotten the very best, historically, the very best of everything from jump. Every opportunity you could possibly imagine has been right here for me the whole time. I know it. I've lived this way. And this kid, he lives with so little. He lives with such tiny things. I don't have any idea what happened to him in his life. I imagine the better things than probably did, right? But I was fighting with God about this. I had questions that I wanted God to answer. Why is it like this? And it is in that wrestling match that I discovered that I don't actually want answers to things, because what answers do is they lead to more questions. What I want is to have the right question. What I want is to recognize that when I'm trying to get God to tell me all the right answers, what God's trying to do is invite me to the wrestling match that will build me into the person that I'm actually created to be. Because it turns out that the questions that surface in us tell us about what we care about. What are the questions you have? The big, scary questions. The ones that you're afraid to say out loud so people will go, I can't believe she said that. But they rise in you. What if those are your friends? They're painful, but what if those are your friends? In Isaiah, God shows up like this. That's not the fast I'm asking you for. Let me show you the fast I'm asking you for. You're looking for answers, so you've become very religious. There's nothing wrong with being very, very faithful. That's wonderful. But be careful that your navel gazing doesn't keep you from becoming who you're called and created to be. This should lead you to intense questions. Why? And so what I discover in this, right, I start wrestling with God hard. I go all over the place. I've been doing it forever. And what I really was kind of aggravated, and this was kind of the way that I came out, and I learn about it all the time, but the thing that I was most aggravated with his life is that his life was going to generally be silenced. He had no voice. He had no power. He had no way to rise. He had no opportunity that I could see. I'm concerned about that. I hope he overcame it. But the look that we had and the differences of things that they were, there was no way this kid was going to rise. And so my life has become this idea of, can I be his voice? This pain, this question actually pushed me to ask deeper questions. I think that's why God says this. Friends, if you don't know who you are, or why you're here, or how come you don't have peace, serve somebody. Get out of your house and out of yourself and serve another human being. And you will discover that the wrestling match rises in you and the hope of the world meets you where you are. And it can be the simplest thing in the world. You just got to show up as a ridiculous 15-year-old trying to make sure that you get the bigger peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and a little kid comes storming out of a house. It's not that hard. And yet it's the most difficult thing in the world, right? So do you want to know how to have peace because you know who you are? Start with service. Just take care of somebody. In the recovery community, it's the first thing that is said often by a sponsor when somebody comes and says, I'm right on the edge, I really feel like I'm about to, and then fill in whatever thing it is. And wouldn't it be weird if we were all kind of addicted to something? So it wouldn't be helpful if somebody said when we rise up and we're about to do the thing of whatever it is that we're addicted to, that somebody would say to you, you really want to get out of this? Yeah, I really do. Serve somebody. Somebody's about to drink, you know what they'll say? Get out of your house, make a peanut butter jelly sandwich, go down and feed the homeless person, take care of your neighbor who needs a little extra help, find out if somebody needs to go to the grocery store. Get out of yourself. Get out of yourself. And God says, and this is wild, you're created for this, to take care of each other. This is the way that it's going to be. I'm going to create a system by which you all take care of yourself and each other. And when you do that, you actually begin to discover something really extraordinary, and that is actually who you are. That it's not about those questions to your answers. It's about the invitation to the journey so that you can actually become the people that you were created to be. Because once you start to serve somebody and get outside of yourself, you can actually see sometimes for the very first time the potential that you have in the world. It's a powerful thing. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, God says. That's the fast. Feed them, clothe them, let's go, right? And then, right? So that your night will become like the noonday sun. So that your darkness becomes light. You want to know who you are? Want to see? Serve. In case you're wondering. And then it gets really crazy because that's the picture is like, because here's the thing, God's not really interested in asking all of your questions all of the time. God will literally hold back, like my dad did it. I'm learning to swim and he would back up in the pool, right? And I'm like, you're backing up. No, I'm not. You can swim farther than you think. Quit backing up, right? I feel like God sometimes does that. He's like, you're bigger, you're stronger, you're more capable than you think. Come on. And you build your identity as you stretch and you stretch. And that's what God says in the next piece is like, you're going to become like a garden cultivated in the desert, a place where people go. You're going to become this beautiful thing when you serve and you get good at it and you begin asking the right questions of yourself and seeing the potential that you have. Now peace looks different because you're incredibly peaceful about what you're doing, even if you are struggling while you do it. because you know who you are. So do you know who you are? And if you're like, yes, like that kid, well, then you're not normal. Most of us actually are growing and becoming all the time. It's much more of a daily thing, isn't it? Stages and times of life. But as we grow, here's what happens. You serve, I serve, we serve. All of a sudden the world begins to change. We begin to give. Our resources become the world's. Here's one. What if we all tithed? Oh no, he said tithe. Yes, I'm gonna say it a lot, I like it. Here's the thing, tithing in our family, what we do is 10% before taxes of all the income that we have. And we've done this, both of our parents, this is a part of their world, and so this is something that we've always done. We find it incredibly important. It gives us a healthy relationship with money and all these other kinds of things. Highly encourage 5 stars. This is a thing, okay? For the discipline of things. But put all that away. You're like, yay, hairs, they're so great. That's not what I'm saying. Here's what I'm saying. What if all Christians did that? What if everybody in this room did that? Right? Do you know what would happen? We'd put the government out of the social work business. Does that sound fun? What would it be like if we weren't dependent on all that stuff? We were dependent on Jesus to direct us how we would transform the world, right? We rise to know who we are and the capacity that we have and the identity of the world to build a kingdom that is around us because we're not interested in anything but that kingdom, its community, and the king who rules it. That's Isaiah. Because the last thing he says is crazy. I will rebuild the ancient ruins. You know those dreams you thought you had that died? You know all those beautiful things that have been decimated? All that stuff that I put into the world? All those ruins? We're going to restore those. You and me. We're going to build them, rebuild them, and see them rise literally up out of the ground. All those promises are going to come to pass, and you are invited to take part. Even you on a little hill, on a piece of property that used to be a hospital for tuberculosis, as it fell into ruins, and now it begins to rise. You want to take part in the transformation of the world? Me too. Serve somebody. Discover who you are. We become a garden in the desert, and we rebuild the ancient ruins like we were created to do so. Because we as a community become thunder and lullaby. Will you pray with me? Heavenly Father, so grateful for all that you are and all that you do. Shape and change us. Help us to do just something simple. Serve the person that's sitting next to us. Open a door. Do the laundry. Something. Help us. And help us to do it just because it's right. Help it to become an addiction in the best way. To find our identity and to rise. We ask all this in Jesus' holy and precious name. Amen.